Good morning, good afternoon, good day. Welcome to another episode of Nation Watch, powered by the People's National Congress Reform. My name is Eden Corbin. Today is December 14th, 2025, and we would like to take this time to wish you season greetings and a Merry Christmas. We are rapidly winding down to the end of the year. We have had a year and a half, a lot of experiences, a lot of lessons learned. And as we come down to the end of this year, we have today with us a very special guest who I'm very positive is no stranger to any of us and a man who warrants no introduction. So, without further ado, I'd like to take this time
Excuse me.
to welcome the leader of the PNCR and the APNU coalition, none other than Mr. Aubrey Compton Norton. Good morning, comrade leader. How are you doing today?
Morning, and thanks for having me. And a Merry Christmas to your the viewing audience, and wishing them a Happy New Year.
Thank you. We're more than happy and delighted to have you today. I would have received a call from Comrade Leader a few weeks back, and he called me. He said, Corbin, when you bringing me on the show?" And I said, "Man, we don't want to bring you as yet. We want to wait until we coming down to the end of the year. We'll do a special interview with you, and we couldn't put it off any further. And we have you here today, and we're going to get straight into it, dealing with the issues that we think touch and concern our supporters and the Guyanese public. So my first question would be, is that do you think that the cost of living in Guyana is increasing or decreasing?
I think it is evident that the cost of living is increasing. I mean, while it's a worldwide phenomenon, the problem here in Ghana is that the government isn't taking measures to reduce the high cost of living. There are many things that can be done. Um, if you're looking at putting people first, then a priority should be those measures that will seek to bring down the cost of living. And we don't only have to bring down the cost of living, we have to increase wages and salaries. And so at the same time, you have to develop the productive sections of the economy. Because if you have high cost of living, if you increase wages and you're not increasing the capacity of the economy to absorb it, then you can run into problems. So what is needed are a number of policy measures to ensure that we can bring down the cost of living. I've always argued that one of the things we need to do, and we put this in our manifesto, is to ensure that every region is self-sustainable in agriculture. If you have region 8, 1, 9, you name it, producing the agricultural products that they need, it will cut costs. You're not flying it in from the coast or carrying it in by boat. It is being produced right there. And so I've argued that we need to have sustainable agriculture in every region to contribute to the reduction in the cost of living. Um, I think also we argued in our manifesto the need to build houses for the people of Guyana. Because if you have a larger section of the population that own their own house and paying um, a reasonable mortgage, then that also will contribute to bringing down the cost of living, because housing is critical to the cost of living phenomenon. Also, one has to focus on health. If one develops a proper health system where people can access drugs, the Constitution of Ghana makes it very clear that health should be free. I have no problem with the private sector being involved in health, but the government has an obligation to ensure it delivers high quality health services at a cheap cost. What that would mean is that also will contribute to the reduction in the cost of living, but the high levels of corruption in the society, in the health sector. I mean, I think every child knows that one of the problems is not that we don't buy drugs. We buy drugs, some of it not delivered, and people make money. And then those that are delivered, there are people in the system who take them and sell them to pharmacies around. So the average Guyanese who goes to one of the public hospital finds it difficult to get the services they need. So there are a number of areas and a number of policy decisions that the government must take to bring down the cost of living. And among those things that we say is increased income. The question of increased income is not a pie in the sky kind of thing. It's a reality that we face. When the coalition left government, poverty was placed by the IDB at, I think, 30 something percent. The IDB is now saying that it is 58%. What that means is, as amidst oil wealth, more people are becoming poorer and poorer. What that says is that that group, the government elite, plus their elite contractors, they are making a lot of money in the system, while the average man cannot survive. When we talk about demanding 25% for workers, is not because we just want to talk. I did it in the press conference we had this weekend. We did the analysis. You have the president, and I'm not here to say the president shouldn't get whatever he's getting, or the minister shouldn't get, or the opposition leader shouldn't get. But we have to look at the facts. The fact is, the president gets somewhere in the vicinity of $29 million a year. A minister gets some in the vicinity of 1.6, 1.8. Now, when the average worker is getting 100,000, what that means, in 1 year, the minister makes in 1 month what the average worker makes in a year, and the president makes 3 times that. It should dawn on them that people need money to live a comfortable life. And while 25% wouldn't bring them where they need to be, 8% is ridiculous. And so we demand that the government give at least 25%. And we didn't say 25%, we said at least. And this is premised on the fact that there is money to do this. The only time I hear the government talking about how you will sustain it, is when it comes to the cost of living and people wages. You just announced that all bridges will be free. We welcome it. But that was income that used to come in. Now that that income isn't coming, the positive of it is people don't have to pay to cross the bridge. But then you can't argue on the one hand that these spendings will affect the economy when it comes to the people and their earnings. But when it comes to the contracts, etc., which the government uses political patronage and make money on, you forget that element of the argument. There has to be balance.
Correct.
You have to invest in your human resource, while at the same time developing sensible infrastructure projects. You can't develop a project. It is evident that the government doesn't have a plan. You don't see forward thinking. Guyanese, okay, with welcome roads, etc. But how much the roads contributing to the reduction in the bottlenecks and traffic delays? Soon as you finish building these roads, you got to fix them. So it is not a case where you get quality. When the Suzdijk-Linnen Highway was done in 1968, it was done with a 20 years guarantee, meaning up to 1988 before you had repairs, etc. You're not seeing that kind of infrastructure development where you have a guarantee that this road will last 10 years. The minute a road is built, you start looking at rehabilitation. That cannot be. And all
Mhm.
of those things will contribute to ensuring the Guyanese people do not get a high quality life.
We hear a lot, and I think you alluded to it just now. We hear a lot about growth in the economy and all of these developments and all of these big projects. And on the other hand, we have families and individuals crying out that, they don't have any money to do the basic necessities. Where do you think is that breakdown between what the government is professing as their success and the harsh realities that the average Guyanese is faced to live every day?
I've always argued that one of the key definitions in politics is the authoritative allocation of resources, meaning simply a country has its resources at its disposal. The state, the government, has responsibility for allocating those resources. If you allocate the resources in a relatively fair way and focus on equity rather than equality, then more resources should be going to those who have less. What we have in this society is the allocation of resources in a way that it allows for corruption, it allows for an elite to get super rich, and while the elite gets super rich, the average man punishes. And so again, unless there is a change in policy direction, unless there's a change to put people first and ensure that in the allocation of resources, they are allocated in a way that it improves the quality of life of the worker, starting with wages and salaries, and then access to education, access to health, that kind of thing. And you're dealing with a government that is farcical in some regard. When a government goes out there to say we give you free education at the university level, you didn't give anybody free education at the university level. First, you took it away in 1994. And then from constant pressure, you bring it back. So it's not a case where you're putting people first and you want to see people develop. You are responding to political pressure. Now, what happened if the government didn't feel the pressure? They would not have done it. And so people would have been paying. Now, when you have a free university, you immediately remove some burdens from the student, the parent, etc. And that is why I thought it should have been so obvious that in a society like this, there's need for free university education. But then it's not just free, it's quality. I am one who don't have much trust in this goal approach. It teems with potential for producing mediocrity. Having lectured at the university, unless you have mechanisms in place to ensure that the papers you are getting are from the students themselves, you have no real mechanism to establish that it is the person and the quality. You might do an exam at the end. But the thing is, we should really have a well worked out university system in which we produce quality persons so that the society can utilize that quality. I meet some university graduates and I was like, how did they graduate? But we don't recognize that when we allow that kind of corruption to seep into the education system, we're doing ourselves a disservice. You have people who are celebrating that they make money and writing paper for students. It sounds like entrepreneurship in the short term, but in the long term, you are producing a substandard person who will get employment above their actual ability.
Mhm.
And then that feeds back into the society,
Mhm.
and you have serious problems. So this thing has to be done in a holistic way. We have to look at every dimension. When you destroy the social fabric of the society, you're also at the same time destroying your economic potential. I was speaking to a man yesterday or day before yesterday who one of his biggest problems is to find workers. Um, the society isn't producing the kind of quality person that we produced before. And then we develop a handout mentality. Now, I do believe in cash transfers, that it helped, but it must go with education and training so that you are preparing those persons for jobs. You are instilling in them a discipline so that they are willing to work and they have a proper work ethic. Like I said before, this thing has to be holistic. It can't be as if you just jumping from here to here in a hodgepodge approach. So
Mhm.
that is to me one of the fundamental problems in the society. There is not a political, economic, and social approach, legal approach to development. It is like if they are all in different compartments when they're in all in the same society.
Mhm. No, we've heard a lot, and there has been a position taken in relation to this cash grant. It has been a flagship promise throughout the campaigning season, and now we are with about less than 2 weeks left in this year, and we have seen nothing in relation to the government in relation to that cash grant. Now, for those persons who would have planned for it or would have anticipated, or the general Guyanese population who may be very well happy for it, what message do you think that sends to them?
That the government isn't accountable. We have to go back. The APNU was in the forefront of the need for cash transfers. And I don't like cash grant because it's the people's money. All happens is that you're in charge of the government and you're responsible for its allocation. So it's really a transfer of the people's money back to the people. When the issue of cash transfer started, there were some in the APNU, AFC at the time who were skeptical. But after that, we arrived at the conclusion, and from when I became leader, we consistently pushed cash transfers because we believe that this society has a lot of resources and the main benefactors should be the people of Guyana. For that reason, we believe that there should be cash transfer, and we have said that it should be predictable. I think the pressure built up on the government because everybody was talking about cash transfer. And so as they went along in the last 5 years, they end up doing some amount of cash transfer. You know that it wasn't well thought out. You know that they didn't see, weren't serious about it. Because in the first case, they said to households. We came in and said, no, it should be to 18 years and above. All the persons who were 18 years and above. They then bought into that and paid it. When it was coming to the election and they recognized that they were behind in terms of policy positions, etc., they ran out and say, in the very style of the president, oh, we will give 200,000 before Christmas. So for him, it was an election campaign gimmick. But for the people of Guyana, it's a promise. It's an election promise. The government is very, very, very barefaced. You saw they put up all about the country, promises delivered. when there were many promises that they didn't deliver on, whether
Mhm.
it is reviewing the contract with ExxonMobil, whether it is increasing workers' wages to a particular level, they didn't. So you see interwoven into the fabric of their approach this interest in being political to keep power. But when it comes to honoring the obligation, it's another issue altogether. I remember we had to go and find some of the proposals they made in 2020 and put them up before they actually admitted that they did say that. So the first problem you have is that the government lacks credibility when it comes to the promises that they make. The second problem you have is that they do not believe, this government clearly believes that the rich should get richer and the poor should get poorer. They seem to believe that once they have a large portion of poor people, they can dangle things in front of them and they will succeed. Of course, I think that is coming to an end. And the last election will add to this lack of credibility. But we, as a political party who offered first to do cash transfer, it's an obligation for us to keep pressure on the government to deliver on their promise. You said to the people of Ghana they will get a cash grant before Christmas. You have a moral obligation, though they lack a moral compass. You they you have a moral obligation to deliver on that promise. So the Guyanese people are looking forward to it. The thing I'd say to the Guyanese people is your money, spend it sensibly.
Mhm.
But this is an election promise that should be delivered on.
Now, there's been a common view of the cash grant, and there's been a position taken by the government that people should not rely on cash grant, or people should not depend on cash grant, and cash grant can't fix the economic situation. What are your thoughts on that?
I do not believe cash transfers can fix the economic situation. But let us not forget it is this government that made people um, rely on handouts. If you look at the government over the years, they were distributing fertilizer, though in a very discriminatory way. They had their own cash grants quietly all across the country, especially in their strongholds. So they develop a mentality. We see cash transfers differently. We see cash transfers as ensuring the people of Guyana access resources that come from oil. Now, we do not believe you should rely on cash grant or cash transfer. We believe it is one way of transferring resources to the people of Ghana. But we also believe that you have to widen the base of the economy so that people can can have employment and can earn. But cash transfers in a predictable way, they allow people to access the resources that are theirs. And it tends to help removing from the society the inequality where the top 1 or 2%, they are having a nice time on the country and the majority of the people suffer. It is in that context we see cash transfer as one of the measures to help reduce poverty and to put resources in people's hands. But we also say it cannot be at the whims and fancies of the government. They wake up today and they feel like they give a cash transfer, they give it. It should be organized and predictable so people can know that this is what they expect in a year. It will allow them to plan and it can also allow them to invest. So we have a kind of a different approach to it than the government. The government sees it as a political tool to stay in power and achieve their political objectives. We see it as one of the tools that can be used to empower people and give them the access to the resources that are really theirs.
Mhm. And on that same issue of political tools, we've seen recently this government adopt an approach in relation to big events. As of recently, we've had things like the Diamond Ball hosted by the First Lady. We've had the Main Street Christmas light up now hosted by the government, and there's several big activities that take over a large expenditure. While on the other hand, we have the average Guyanese suffering to or struggling to make ends meet in relation to that. Is it a case where we can say that the priorities of this government are misplaced?
They are not only misplaced, they are political machinations. Let's go back. You had Kashif in Shanghai, which was a private investment. We've had our problems with them at the political level. But as a young business entity, it was doing a fine job in Guyana. That has been killed by the government. So that you see One Guyana Football, everything has been politicized. I hold no brief. As far as I know, they do support the PPP Kashif in Shanghai. But as a politician, I have to observe that the government has destroyed entertainment institution. I hold the same view about the handling of hits and jams, where here you had, and I'm no lover of hits and jams. I'm talking here from the standpoint of a fledgling business that young people started, and they were doing fairly good as business people. But the government has virtually taken over all the entertainment. It has become so bad that if you are an artist and you're not supportive of the government, you can no longer access resources. So when you kill the private sector entertainment, you are in fact making the society more dictatorial and authoritarian, because artists do not have the opportunity or as much opportunity as they had before to be part of a private sector entertainment body, and therefore can get the best people you want. I mean, you just have to see how the government marginalizes Kwesi. It's not for lack of ability. It is from their perception that he is not controllable politically. And so it's a dangerous trend that people aren't paying attention to. The government becoming involved in entertainment and certain social activities and pushing out private people. And yet the private sector commission will go on as if this government, of course, a lot of them in the private sector commission are PPP oriented persons, but they cannot see that people are being pushed out of business and the government is monopolizing the entertainment industry. And so that avenue for people to independently make money virtually no longer exists. And I think it is something that we have to pay careful attention to. You cannot claim to like the private sector, but you are selective in who you push out. And I can give you numerous other cases where you saw young entrepreneurs. I mean, the first time I went to a rum fest, I felt it was a good business, we call it. It is obvious to me that they have been pushed out as well.
Mm.
Of course, the government could go now and tell them they need to say they weren't pushed out, blah, 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 because that's what they do.
Mm-hmm.
But we are seeing a government that is consistently and continuously authoritarian. And they are closing off a lot of opportunities for young private sector development unless they are in charge of it.
But how do we respond to that? where they can say, or the argument can be made, that in relation to developing a tourism brand in Guyana, and in relation to being able to empower some of those entities in the private sector, especially the entertainment, how do we respond to that?
I respond to it to say the government should be a facilitator, not an actor. What has happened is the government has moved from creating the environment for that entertainment industry to succeed to becoming a key actor. So on the one hand, you are talking about private sector development, but on the other hand, you are pushing state-centered and state-controlled entertainment while simultaneously pushing young entertainment and entrepreneurs out of business. The government cannot come now and make the argument, such an argument. If you're claiming that you're business oriented and you're private sector oriented, then you should put the rules and regulation in place and facilitate private sector development. But you can't identify an industry, okay, and decide you're going to close off that industry. And if you say it's discrimination, they will become annoyed. But look at the people who are closed out of the entertainment sector, and you will see. And a lot of people in the entertainment sector will afraid to speak, but they know it is the reality. You no longer have in the society a striving private sector entertainment industry. All of it, or most of it, have been usurped by the government, and the government exercises control to the point where individual artists see their only chance of existence is being supportive of the government and whatever they're doing, even though it is killing the very industry that they should be in. Hits and Jams, for instance, and like I said, I hold no brief for them. I've had differences with them, but they were doing extremely well in the entertainment industry, and you have virtually forced them out. You might say you give them a contract, but the contract was outside of the confines of their capabilities. Their real competitive advantage is in entertainment. And so I see the government's approach as one of killing entertainment in the private sector if they cannot control the persons.
What do you think is one of the key things that needs to be done in relation to reducing? I mean, I know you spoke about it just now, but to specifically address it, considering our economic situation and the political culture, what do you think are one of the key things that should be the main focus of any government in Guyana in relation to reducing that cost of living cost that we have?
The main focus has to be a menu of measures that will allow us. I mentioned what they need to do in agriculture. They need to facilitate a wider, a more organized plan to have young people in business. We've mentioned the fact that in terms of public sector workers, they need to be paid better wages and salaries. You are looking at a society in which the cost is rising. If you come in now and in a structured way, create the mechanism for people to get houses, like we said to the Guyanese people, we will do rent to own. We felt that will remove certain burdens. They don't have to go and find a 10% or a 20% to a bank. The government put the mechanism in place, the houses are built, you deliver to them, and they pay out of their salary, etc. That will contribute to bringing down the cost of living. We said encourage agriculture across the regions. That will bring down the cost of living. You have to upskill and reskill people. Give them, those who have the basics, up the skills. Those who don't have, you give them skills. And some might have skills that are irrelevant. You have to reskill them. When you offer people those opportunities, you are increasing their capacity to earn, and their earning will contribute to bringing down their cost of living. I'm the one who believes in price regulation, but I do believe if more products are out there and people have the purchasing power, prices will come down. If products come out and people don't have the purchasing power, the price will go up. I mean, basic economics tells you that where there is scarcity, the price goes up. Where there is abundance, it tends to come down. And so the government has to ensure that the goods and services needed are there, and they are there at a cheaper price than they are now. And so a lot of these measures can be taken to deal with the cost of living. The cost of living, like I said, is not restricted only to food. It has housing, it has water, it has health, it has education. And so we have to look at all the dimensions to deal with the cost of living in Guyana. And before people run away the impression that I believe that we should spend out all the oil money, I do not believe that. I believe we need to do intergenerational preparation, that a percentage should be given to savings for future generation. I mean, I was just reading about Norway that now has in its sovereign wealth fund, what we call a natural resource fund, $3 trillion, while we, a little country, spending out the money, just putting it into waste projects. We got a gas, the energy project that coming since Noah was a little boy. Noah's turned a big man and pass on, and it's not here yet. So reducing corruption will also contribute to a reduction in the cost of living. Once you have a corrupt society, a lot of the resources that should meet people wouldn't meet people. Excuse me. The health sector is a clear case. And we have to reduce corruption. We have to improve efficiency. Because if you're an efficient economy, then things will cost less. So there are a plethora of measures that have got to be taken. But the government cannot take it because they have created a paradigm in which they themselves want to get rich, and they have a few people that they want to get rich. And so they structure the allocation of resources in a way that it will enrich the family, the friends, and the favorite, and the Guyanese people will punish.
And in closing on this point, what do you say to the voters who are skeptical that any government or political party can effectively reduce the cost of living and make it affordable for them? What do we say to those?
Just what I just said, that as a government, we put those measures in place. And once those measures are in place, there will be a reduction in the cost of living. And it's not only reducing the cost of living, it's improving your quality of life. The things we have identified in our manifesto, etc., we're clearly going to improve the quality of life of the people. This is not solely an issue of cost of living. Cost of living is one dimension. But let's assume the cost of living, the general cost of living is reduced, but your corruption continues to be high, then itself will be a problem. If you can't get the social services you need, look, whether they like it or not, under the APNU, you are getting quality water because we invested more in water. Now they see investment in wells, not treatment of water. So the quality at the end
Mm-hmm.
isn't there. And so you're not improving the lives of the people. Water, health, education, housing are critical to improving the life of the people, their wages and salaries. And so it has to be a holistic approach in which you set out to put people first and give them a better quality of life.
Thank you, Comrade Lido. Now, we're winding down rapidly to the end of the year. What are your plans or your priority areas going into the new year as the leader of the party?
Reorganizing, revitalizing the PNC and the APNU. When you come out of an election in which you suffer defeat, you cannot just bury your head in the sand. What has happened? There were many things that accumulate, including the question of disunity in the party. And all of those issues we will have to address. But most importantly, we have to work amongst the youth of this country to achieve our objectives. And so my major focus will be on rebuilding, ensuring we produce a core of young people. You are one of them. There are many more. A core of young people who we educate, we train, and you know that process has begun in the party, so that they can take over the party. We have allowed too many people to just come into the party, and they see position, and the end game is position. We have to train party people to ensure that all understand that this thing is about service. Yes, everybody wants to be promoted, everybody wants to be something. But if that is your major focus, what will happen is that when you don't get what you want, you think you need to go somewhere else. We have to develop a commitment in young people to this party. We have to ensure that young people have the tools to survive in this world. So I would say the major task going forward is reorganizing, revitalizing, and repositioning the party.
Um, how will we now balance being a formidable opposition with our engagement with the Guyanese people at a national level? How do you see us striking that balance now?
Well, a lot of it is dependent on the machinery we put in place in the party. Once we do the rebuilding, put the structures in place, then you will have a wider concentration of people engaging at different levels, and you improve the party structure so that there's information going down and information coming up.
What does our governance as a party and as part of the opposition, what does governance for us, or what could we expect in relation to governance going into the new year?
You see, people mix up government and governance. Governance is how you do it. We have to ensure that people are held accountable, that there is transparency, but most importantly, there is equity. You see, and that is why we talk about graduated wages and salaries, because we do believe those who are getting plenty shouldn't be getting across the board increases. I've made the point many times. If you give a worker who is working for $100,000 a month a 10% increase, that person goes up to $110,000. If you give a minister who's getting 1.8 increase, that person gets 180,000 increase in a month. You know what that means? The increase alone is more than the salary of the average worker. So we have to develop a system that is aimed at closing the gap between rich and poor. We have to ensure that those at the bottom get more and those at the top get less, for the want of a better word, because you cannot continue with a system in which the rich is getting rich and the poor is getting poorer. That is a recipe for tension, for upheavals, and Guyana would be better off solving these problems in a structured way rather than having to go the route that we don't want to go to solve the problems. So if we can make the systemic changes that are necessary and develop a good governance approach, then we are going to be in a better position because we are likely to be inclusive, transparent, accountable, and promoting equity.
Mm. Now, prior to the last elections, there has been a lot of talks about coalition and partnerships within the political space. And based on the new dynamic in the parliament now, based on the results of the elections, there have been concerns about coalitions and partnerships. Going into 2026, based on what we see playing out in the political plane now, can we look forward to any coalition building or partnerships?
Well, I wouldn't say coalition building because you see, if it's coalition, you had to do it before the elections. But what I see is cooperation in some areas. Now, not two political parties will have the same agenda. How a party emerge also tells a lot. And so, in some regard, we will have to cooperate. But there are many areas where I believe we will have differences and we will state a different position. However, we will still pursue coalition at a wider level for the next elections. Um, we believe in, like I said, good governance. Um, we have to assess all the parties in parliament and operate and relate to them based on what is perceived to be the national interest, our members and supporters' interest, and the interest of the wider Guyanese society.
Now, coming down to the end of the program today, right? Excuse me. What should Guyanese, and I think you would have answered it, but just so persons might miss it, what can Guyanese expect from APNU in the first quarter of the new year? What are some things they can look forward to?
They can look forward to us engaging them, sounding them out, and having an understanding of their desires. Two, they can look forward to us representing them both in parliament and out of parliament. One of the tasks of the opposition is to expose government. We will do that. We also intend to work with communities to help them in some regard. And sometimes people believe that help is just finance. But I think we can put together social workers or people with social work skills to go into communities and help our young people.
Mhm.
A lot of our young people need guidance. They need, the school system has collapsed. You have to look at the picture you saw with what is supposed to be our children doing in school. Now, that is because we are allowing a particular culture to develop. The government must take direct responsibility for it. It is the government that promotes that type of behavior, that kind of culture. So we have got to engage those young people and help them to develop in another direction. We will, as much as we could, help cushion the cost of living, but as an opposition political party, that's not one of the things you will have the resources to do. But we will do as much as we can. We will engage the youth because I do believe that urgent work needs to be done with the youth. This government is allowing a situation where young people's priorities are misplaced. And as a result of that, you are not developing the kind of young people you want to take the society forward. There are those young people who are naturally good and have their own moral compass, etc. But my deep concern is the wider society. When you allow a society to believe bribery and corruption is normal, then you destroy the society. You know, only recently I had an experience. I was to the corner of, that is Vicinjan Road. No, it has another name. I don't remember it now. And Lamaha, Irvin Street. Irvin Street and Lamaha. And when I want to turn right, you're supposed to go out on the thing and come in this way. Every driver, it has become the norm, cut across. So even if you try to do the right thing, it's a problem. And so you have a situation where something as simple as driving has become a lawless situation. And if you have a lawless situation, you're in deep trouble. And every time I'm on the road, I worry, because you can do all that you want to do to protect yourself. It doesn't stop somebody who is in the lawless culture to cause you to end up where you don't want to end up. So we have got to deal with the fabric of this society, and it has to start with the young people and the children.
Very, very well put. And this is my second to last question, right? Next year, this time, 2026, what do you want the conversation to be about? Just looking ahead, next year, this time.
I would like the conversation to be how we can all develop this country and ensure that the resources are allocated in a proper way. I would like the conversation to be a deep-rooted conversation on how we deal with the ethnic problems in Guyana, which have social, economic, and political dimension. But most important, I would like the conversation to be how we change the course of our young people and place them on a path to genuine development. I would want the conversation to be there, and for us to push for a natural resource fund that saves for future generation and protect us when the oil price is down. You don't hear countries with a proper natural resource fund worrying about when the oil price goes down because they've invested their money properly. What we have here is a kleptocracy that isn't investing properly.
Now, I ask every guest this in closing. I would want you to speak to the Guyanese people, especially those who may not be able to have a ideal Christmas that they may want to, and to our supporters at this time. I'd like you to just give them a bit of encouragement in closing.
I would say hopelessness is not something you should encourage. I would say to every member of the PNC, every member of the Guyanese public, you need to always be hopeful. You need to become a problem solver rather than allowing problems to dominate you. I've always argued that the test of somebody is not how they do when everything is going fine. It's how they do when they have problems to confront. And I believe Guyanese are resilient, competent people. And once we maintain hope and know clearly what we want, then we can move forward and overcome the problems we have. That is what I'll say. Let there be hope. Become a problem solver. Do not depress yourself with the problems. Solve those that you can solve in the short term and plan for those that you have to solve in the long term.
Thank you so much, Comrade Leader.
Thanks for
And
having
on
me.
behalf of myself and our team here at Nation Watch, and on behalf of the party, I'd like to wish yourself and your family a Merry Christmas. We'd also like to thank you here on the show for your stern leadership through this very trying time that we've had, and you've been able to keep us afloat and still moving, and we're appreciative of that. And you know you have our support. And moving into 2026 and everything else to follow, we will continue to, as you would have probably coined, put the Guyanese people first. Well, ladies and gentlemen,
I wanted to say
okay,
before you close,
yes, yes.
thanks to you too for your contribution. Not many young people will take on something like this without worry. And one of the things I say to people, I like the fact that you take initiatives. I believe good leaders must be able to initiate, overcome problems, and have a kind of firmness and flexibility that allow you to think. So I would say Merry Christmas to you and your family, and to all members of the PNC and the wider Guyanese society.
Thank you so much, Comrade Leader.
Thank you.
And thank you, our listeners and viewers, for tuning in with us today. We want to wish you once again Merry Christmas and season's greetings to you all. And we hope to see you next time here on Nation Watch. Thank you.